We are going to be adding unit testing to our string library project. And what the unit testing does is for the string library method, it will send data to this method, and the method is going to return true or false. And then we're going to check what it returns against what we believe it should return. So for example, if we send a string in all lowercase letters, this should return false. And so one of the unit tests that we're going to do is going to do exactly that. It's going to send all lowercase letters, check to see if it returns false. And if it returns false, then it passes the unit test. We're also going to test this by sending it a string with a capital letter, in which case it should return true. And if it returns true, then it passes the unit test. And the last thing that we're going to send it is an empty string. And if we send it an empty string, it should return false, right? Because it's checking for that right here. And as long as it returns false, then it's going to pass the unit test. So a unit test is used to make sure that a method, like starts with upper, or a function is working properly. And you try to send it the different values that it would actually receive in production. So what we are going to do is we are going to add a new project. So right up on the solution, we're going to right click. We're going to go to add and we're going to choose new project. Now there are 3 different types of unit test frameworks. The default is MSTest, and that is the one that we're going to use. For unit testing, as far as what you need to know for your certification exam that you will be taking in CIT218, you need to understand the basics of unit testing. The questions on that test do not deal with a specific framework. Okay, so we're just going to go with the default here, MSTest, and you can see the first thing that shows up is MSTest test project. You want to make sure your language is C#, and we're going to select that and click on next. Now for our project name, we want string library test. And we'll click on next. Want to make sure that the framework is .NET 6 long-term support, and you can click on create. All right, so I've done this more than once, so I'm going to have to make this a little unique name. So you guys keep string library test, and I'm just going to put a little A on the end. We'll just pretend I didn't put that there. All right, so now I have my little string library test project in here. And you will notice that I have a little template of code. And the important things to note here is it creates a test class and it adds one test method. So the test class has a little attribute above it. And you're going to be learning more about attributes when we cover MVC. But attributes are kind of used extensively. So we'll be working a lot with them. But these particular attributes, test class indicates that we are doing unit testing. And anything that has an attribute of test method is going to be automatically run. So we're going to be creating multiple test methods, and each one of them is going to have this attribute above it so that when we run the unit test, it's automatically going to run all of our test methods. Now, there is no need to adjust this at this point because we are going to be adding quite a bit of code in a few minutes. Now, in order for us to be able to do these unit tests, we do need to connect to that string library. So we need to add a reference in string library test to the string library project. And so that is a dependency. So we're going to right click on dependencies, and we are going to add a project reference. And we are going to be using the string library. So we're going to select that and we're going to click OK. Okay, so that will connect those two. So at this point, we are going to add the unit test methods. And I am going to just go ahead and copy this code right from the tutorial. I'll paste it in. And you shouldn't have to do much adjusting to the code, but I am going to have to do a little adjustment here to the namespace because if you remember, I couldn't just use string library test because I've done this before. So I had to make my name a little unique. All right, so what this is doing. We've still got our unit test class. Okay, but now we have three different test methods. Each one has a test method attribute, so it'll be automatically run. And you'll notice that the test method names are unique and they're pretty specific. So the idea behind naming your test methods is to indicate what it's testing. So you can see this first one is going to see if the strings that start with uppercase letters retrieve true. And then this next one is going to check to see if strings that don't have any uppercase return false. And then this last one is going to test empty strings or null strings. And those should also return false. So these are named to describe what they're doing. Then you'll notice that the variable that we're dealing with is a string array called words. And the first one has different types of letters. We've even got some foreign letters. And we're going to have to actually save the project a little differently because of that. And below the string is a for each loop. So it's going to go through each one of those words. It's going to use the word object to call starts with upper, and then starts with upper is going to return true or false. When you do unit testing, you use something called assert methods. And so assert.isTrue assumes that it's going to return true. So it's assuming this result is going to be true. And if the result is true, it passes the test. And if the result is false, it's going to fail the test. Okay, so we're passing along the result, and then we are basically printing out a little message, right? We expected, you know, whatever we got here, this word to be true, but it was actually, and then we're going to print out what the result was, true or false. Okay, so it's going to do that for each one of the words. Then the next one, test does not start with upper. It's going to kind of do the same thing. And you'll notice that we've got special characters in here. We've got some foreign letters. And so it's going to go through, grab each word. Call starts with upper. This time we are expecting false because these do not start with uppercase. Okay, so it's going to check the result against false. And if the result is false, it passes. If the result is not false, it does not pass. It fails the unit test. And only one of these needs to fail for this unit test to fail. Okay, and then we have the little message that we print out. And then the last one, we have an empty and a null string. And so it's going to first send the empty one, then it's going to send the null one. And again, we are expecting it to return false. So as long as it returns false, then it passes the test. So that's kind of how the unit testing works. Okay, and when we run a unit test, it automatically runs a build. So we can go into the test menu and select Run All Tests. If Run All Tests is dimmed, you may have to go into the Test Explorer. And this window should open anyway when you are doing unit testing, because this is where you see your results. And so here I've got 3 total tests. And over here, it's saying they have not run. So I can actually run all of them clicking this run button as well. So if I click on that button, first thing it should do is run a build. Hopefully. And let's see, we'll try it up here. Oh, I forgot to save it. That's right. All right. Glad that happened. So we are going to save this because we got those weird characters. Getting ahead of myself. We're going to save unit test as. And then we have to come down to the save list arrow and save with encoding. All right, and then what you should see here, or what you need to select, is UTF-8 signature. And then click OK. And now it should run. Yay, let's go ahead and try it. Come on. Let's try it up here. All right, so my build succeeded. That's always good. And you can see it did find my tests. 3 passed, 0 failed. Okay, so if I expand out here, I can see each one of those methods and then how long it took to run them. Now, if I want one of these to fail, I can actually add something else, or I can just capitalize zebra, right? Because if I'm expecting lowercase and I'm checking to see if it's false, this one is going to return true. So let me test this again. And you can see what happens when it fails, because this unit test is going to fail. And then you can see the message that we had printed out. So that is this message here. Okay, so expected for zebra was false, and we actually got true. So now if we put zebra back to all lowercase, okay, then everything will work. And we could do the same thing up here, right? We could do zebra in lowercase here, in which case the first one is going to fail. Now our second one should be successful. Oh, actually test starts with upper. This first method did fail. It's just listed down here last because it's in alphabetical order. Okay, but it did fail just like we expected, and it's got the message. So that is unit testing. It actually works pretty slick. In the tutorial, they do talk about a couple other assertion methods. So we've got our equal, and that basically checks to see that what it returns equals what you think it will. So in this case, when you use our equal, you're going to be passing the value that was returned and also the value you expect it to be. Our same is going to be kind of similar, right? So you are going to pass it the object that was returned and the object you expected it to return. And we used is false and is true. There is also a is not null. Okay, there are lots of other assert methods. In fact, I will put a link to them in this little segment under course resources, just so you can kind of get a feel for all the different assert methods that are out there. Now, our next little step. We have tested all of this in debug mode, but we should also test the release to make sure that that is also going to work. So to test the release, we are going to change this from debug to release. And then we are going to right click on this solution and run a build, because that should run the build for the 3 different programs. And then if you look down here, it says build 3 succeeded, because it did the one for showcase, string library, and also my string library tests. And now I'm going to go ahead and run all of the tests on this release version. And that was really quick, and they all worked. So at this point, you guys are done. And what you are going to need to do is you're going to close out of the solution. And then you're going to go over to your repos. And you're going to take string library, and you're going to compress that file. And then you're going to be uploading that to the Dropbox. So if you still feel a little fuzzy on unit testing, we do unit testing in the 228 class. We also, I have a unit that I've added to the 255 class. So you're getting it in 3 different places. But if you feel like you should do more, that is something that you can use for the PD requirement in this course. So under professional development, if you wanted to practice unit testing more, all you have to do is record the number of hours you spend, and submit a little summary of what you did, okay? Because that counts for the PD requirement. Also, if you need help, let me know because I'd be happy to help you. Okay, and that's pretty much all we've got on tap for this week. Next week, we are going to be getting into MVC. We're going to be using Visual Studio. And once we start using MVC, we are going to be using .NET Core 3.1 instead of the .NET Core 6, okay? Because MVC uses a little different flavor of that.